Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this very special edition of Fellowship of Reconciliations Gathering Voices with Leila Zand, my dear friend and a member of Fellowship of Reconciliations National Council, which is our board. Who has just returned from her home country of Iran. And I know I have so many things to ask her. And but I want to first, in introducing you, Leila, I want to speak about you were that there's a phrase that always, anytime I hear it or think it's you that comes to mind, and it's the term citizen diplomacy, and you really both personify that and taught me about that meaning to you, that all of us as individual people can be diplomats in our own right, whether our government is behaving in diplomatic ways or behaving in warlike ways. We have the opportunity as individuals, one-on-one, to be citizen diplomats in our lives. And it's a grace that you carry and taught me. So welcome, Leila, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm very excited.
So before we get into some political talk, including citizen diplomacy, I was hoping you could start us out with a bit of your life story, where you were born, and when you left there, and just a little overview.
I love to talk, and I love to talk about myself. Yes, I was born in Iran before the Islamic Revolution of 1979. I was very young then. I was in kindergarten at the time of revolution. Please don't calculate how old I am now, but that means I am part of a generation that experienced the revolution, having a new government in the office, and the chaos that comes with it. And that followed with the war, 8 years of war with Iraq, which I have a lot of memories of, very bitter memories. Sometimes even when I hear the sound of screaming, or when I see these, photos and pictures from Gaza these days, it reminds me of what I saw sometimes in the first hand when the bomb and missiles that was sold to Saddam Hussein by the United States and NATO, basically. It was used in Tehran, the city that I come from, and sometimes it was in other cities, and I just saw the secondhand, the photos of that. Later in life, these days, I became involved with the peace activities, and now I see again the first hand or second hand of those who were injured by chemical weapons, those who have their kids are born with various problems because of what Saddam did and using chemical weapons against the civilians. That is besides the soldiers and in the war front. So I graduated from college with the degree in history, bachelor in history, and I went later, after, of course, many years of school, and then I came to the United States. I went to City University of New York for graduate school, and I got a master's in Middle Eastern studies. Later in Ohio, I got a PhD on public policy. And public policy, basically, and justice, which I wrote my dissertation on citizen diplomacy. Mainly, it was an interdisciplinary. Why citizen diplomacy? Because as an immigrant, when I came to the United States, it was really interesting to see not many Americans know about Iran or reality of Iran. Sometimes funny questions like, have you ever seen a car? Have you, I don't know, do you in Iran do you dress like here? So questions like that, to the questions like, or curious people that wanted to know if women have a freedom in Iran, how do we live? And so I thought I became a kind of ambassador of my country into my small community of neighbors and schools and my classmates, and later, my students. So I started to talk about Iran. In 2006, I became involved with Fellowship of Reconciliation, and I put that as a highlight of my life. I am really honored to work with the wonderful, fascinating people, programs, and history and legacy of such an organization. I became in love with Dr. King and Bayard Rustin, and I started to know about American, basically, life till 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And today, my life as a Muslim, Middle Eastern woman, brown, in this country. So I think it's not really a surprise for someone like me to be interested to know how, about citizen diplomacy, or be interested in citizen diplomacy. And then when I was the head of the Middle East program at Fellowship of Reconciliation, one of the work that I did, and a person previous to me, Hussein Alizadeh, was the head of that program. He started that, but I expanded into Middle East. He started the Iran program, and I expanded into Middle East because I learned that even as a Middle Eastern myself, I don't know basically anything about the Middle East, because I thought the Middle East means being an Iranian, being a Muslim, being, variety of religions in that area. But when I traveled over there, I learned that I don't know much about that. We are all different, and at the same time, we all are the same. And maybe my voice as a person who has all of these differences could be a little help in order for us, the people, to understand that with all of the differences that we have a lot in common. So with the help of Dr. Mark Johnson, God bless his soul, he was an amazing guy. He was the director, the head of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. He helped me to develop that program, citizen diplomacy in the Middle East. So that was part of that, was basically traveling to different countries that the United States doesn't have the good relationship with. Now I want to pretend that I know about the citizen diplomacy and be a little bit academic about that. That citizen diplomacy basically is known as a track 2 diplomacy. And it is at work when the government of any two countries cannot have any relationship, any normal relationship. Now, like United States and Iran, United States and Cuba, or Israel and Palestine, and many different countries, or India and Bangladesh, or India and Kashmir. So all of these places, when they couldn't make the relationship, and they started to have a track 2 diplomacy. And that is the time that the average people, average citizens like you and I, people with different backgrounds, professionals like artists, from filmmakers to poets to anyone, name it, and to engineers, doctors, educators, students, based on their interests and based on their profession, they can meet one another and they can learn about one another's suffering, and they can hear each other without the government's involvement. At such a time, of course, citizen diplomacy has higher levels as well. There are a lot of back channel meetings that is track 2 diplomacy. Some of those back channel meetings happen, even between average people like you and I, if, for instance, I'm a poet from Iran and you are a poet from the United States, we decide to work and to have a meeting between all, important poets from the two countries in the third country. And then we can meet and maybe we can create a beautiful literature for our governments to use and to understand each other. Basically is listening to one another firsthand and to learn about each other's suffering. For instance, when Americans, so let me get back a little bit to my work at FOR. So I believe for 7-8 years at FOR, more than 300, almost 400 people traveled through FOR to Iran. And then we had like interfaith communities to meet, artists to meet, and like many different professions, like doctors, physicians. We had students to mingle and to talk about. It was through these programs and it was through these meetings that many of my American colleagues and friends learned that, for instance, of course, they are suffering from the history of hostage crisis and what happened after the Islamic Revolution immediately. But also for Iranians, this bitter relationship started from 1953 when the coup against the Mohammad Mossadegh, the Iranian prime minister, democratically elected prime minister, was taking place in Iran. So for Iranians, it started from then. And maybe it was the fear of such an event, the same coup that happened in 53, made the Iranian students who were passionate then, who were young, who didn't want any such an event to take place again, maybe that made them to enter the U.S. embassy and do that illegal action. So that, for instance, is one of the things we can understand based on communication with one another, specifically when we met with the government officials, with representative of the parliaments. And it was then that my Jewish friends learned that, for instance, Iran has the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside of Israel, of course. And Jews have a long, long history in Iran, that Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians have representative in the Iranian parliament. It was through these meetings that, for instance, they learned that Iranians are still suffering from the chemical weapons used by Saddam Hussein. That United States never ever talked about it. And so it was many of these meetings that made my American friends and colleagues to come back and to talk to their communities and to let them know that, yes, there are some Iranian people who are crazy, like many other places in the world. There are people left and right and, conservatives and people who don't like anyone and people who are very friendly. But in average Iranians like us, like many other nations. And that was what I believe it was really fascinating to see these similarities. Myself, I'm so proud of one of the meetings that I led, and it was in Qom. For people who are familiar with Qom, it's like a Vatican of Tehran, and it was a students' gathering, and it was a beautiful conversation between ulama or who are in Qom, and that is the clergy people or clergies. Student clergies who go to school for being a clergy, like union school, for instance. They go there, and then with 14 rabbis and 17 clergymen from the different churches in the United States. So it was amazing to see how beautiful their conversation is and how they can come with one single message that God have, send them to deliver. And that was so fascinating. And it was through these meetings to learn for my American friends, many, especially students and younger people, to learn that more than 60% of Iranian women have higher education. We have women vice presidents in Iran. We have people are free to go to study for any kind of things that they want to study. There are some difficulties. I don't say everything is rosy. Of course, many people have traveled there and many people can read, but it's not really that black and white. It's not that gloomy that we all hear through the media. And of course, these days, almost all of us know what media is doing. And we are all angry at them, basically.
So it was working with you on lifting Iranian sanctions that I traveled to Iran in the first time in 2019, and was really in awe of the culture and the art and the theater, the music, just some of the finest in the world. And I had the privilege while there of visiting a couple of synagogues and meeting with a couple of Jewish communities there. And I was wondering if you would talk about two things. One, about the Jewish population in Iran, and also if you would give a bit of a picture, because when I worked with you on this issue, it was after sanctions had been reimposed on Iran. So if you would talk about a little bit of what life was like in Iran during the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. So setting the stage for, then of course things changed.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yes, I had wonderful experience also working with Ariel in different words, but it was amazing. And I always appreciate that. I've learned a lot from you, Ariel, and you basically very brave woman. I remember any time that you interrupted meetings in DC, and I always appreciate that and admire you. Iran, basically, let me put it this way. In the past more than 200 years, Iran never has attacked to any country, any of its neighbors. And it's a country with many neighbors, I believe something like 12, 13 different countries are around Iran. And it's not the most quiet area in the world. So for many years, we had United States in Iran's east, in Afghanistan, and in the west of Iran, in Iraq. Then also in the Persian Gulf, since Carter presidency, we always had something over there. Fifth Fleet of the U.S. Fifth Fleet is in Bahrain. Azerbaijan has the U.S. has a base. Basically, nobody knows how many bases the United States has, but because maybe Americans don't know themselves, American officials, maybe they don't know it themselves because there are many. So anyway, with all of this, sending all of these, I don't say Iran is the most quiet country, but it is basically peaceful, and it never started a problem in the region. Of course, it's a big country. I'm a realist politically, from the political perspective, and I think has done many things that many of our neighbors don't like it, but at the same time want to save itself. So maybe those are the ways that has done that, and there is no way I could defend those. But in general, I would say Iranian people are very peaceful and pro-peace. Basically, I remember one time with Code Pink, I traveled to Iran. Medea Benjamin had a sign on her bag says, "No war with Iran," in Farsi. But then people were confused and they asked, why war? We don't want a war with anyone. Why are you talking about that? So basically, war is not something they would think about it. and they want a relationship with everyone. It is, I'm not lying if I say all over the Middle East, maybe the only people or the only nation who like American very much are Iranians. And they want a relationship with everyone. So they were so happy when JCPOA was signed. They were very happy and very looking forward to the future because they thought, first of all, we are going to have a peaceful relationship with everyone. Then the sanctions will lift because people are really suffering from sanctions. I was there and I was expending dollar, basically. It's 50,000 toman, which is Iranian street money. Is equal with $1. So I was just before the meeting starts, I was telling Ariel that I paid only with American money, I paid only $2 for this. And but it's very difficult for people who live there and make money not with dollar, but with toman or rial, the Iranian efficiency. And it's very difficult, and we know how difficult sanctions and a bad economy how difficult it makes. For instance, the situation of patients and people with problems, people who are sick. It's very difficult for them, not for the medicine. But because Iran actually it had really improved its own way of making medicine. It produced medicine, variety of medicine itself, but it doesn't have all ingredients. It needs to bring ingredients in order to make the pills or whatever necessary. And some of these issues, some of these ingredients cannot really come into the country, basically because Iran cannot use the banks in order to make that, to pay for that and whatever they buy. And add to that, when the government cannot sell their oil and it's limited amount of oil that they can sell, basically they cannot make as much as money they want in order to pay for everything. Add to that, of course, Iran is suffering from institutionalized discrimination, I would say, institutionalized bad the government mismanagement, and the government really, they are not using all their power in order to, or maybe they cannot, I don't know. The mismanagement is really making a horrible situation. I don't say everything is sanctioned, but sanctions is adding to all of these miseries. For instance, I was talking to a mother who couldn't really get the medicine for her child, basically on the good price. It was in a black market, but she couldn't find anything in a regular drugstore. And that means sanctions create a section in the community, a section of Iranians who are making a lot of money illegally because they just go around the laws and because they can bring illegal things into the country, and making a small number of people very rich and a big number of people in the nation very poor, and this gap is dividing every minute. Basically, people are suffering really bad, and this suffrage, we can say, actually in many different areas. One of the main things is on women, basically because I'm a woman, and basically because United States always use women's issue in order to help other countries to promote democracy. For instance, in Afghanistan, the women's issue, one of the issues that the US always talked about it. So I talked to my Iranian friends, women. For instance, a woman, Arzu, is a very successful woman. She is a businesswoman. She has the business of carpet, which is very unusual for women to have this business, export. But she had to cut her business. She had to cut down her employees because she cannot sell her carpet outside of Iran. And so she, interestingly, based on her work, she started small businesses for other women, carpet makers. Women usually work in the workshops to make a carpet. And those women also lost their way of making money. Besides, we can think about it, Middle East in general and Iran also, it's a patriarchal society, and men have the most important voice. And so government, when they want to get rid of some of their employees, for instance, the first ones who are target are women. Women lose their jobs faster, women make their less money. And of course, think about it, angry, poor men, when they come at home, so they are not really happy. So that makes the life for women is, again, very difficult. So sanctions are really destroying the society on many issues, and on the research areas, and for students and professors also, in many, many different areas. People are suffering, and environment, on many different areas. Anywhere you look, sanctions are really creating difficulties for the society, and not the government, because centrifuges is still the main issue for the sanctions have been the enriched uranium and centrifuges, but centrifuges still are going around, and uranium still are getting enriched. So Iran is, and in the news also, anything happens, we hear in these days Iran's name, that Iran is supporting this and supporting that. So that means nothing happened to the government, but happened a lot to the people. The Jewish community, I was very lucky to visit for the first time the city of Hamadan when I was in Iran. And Esther and Mordechai, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, the tomb of Esther and Mordechai is there. First of all, my bad, and mistakenly, I went over there on Saturday, and it was closed because there is a synagogue also next to it. So the people who run the synagogue, they run this museum of Esther and Mordechai. And then I had to postpone my trip back to Tehran because I definitely wanted to see there. So the next day on Sunday, I went over there. And the person who was taking care of the museum and the tomb of Esther and Mordechai, he said, the tomb is closed and I cannot allow you to go in. When I asked, they said because of the new development in Gaza and Israelis. So the government thought maybe there are some people who are going to make problems for us. And they decided we close the doors and don't open it for anyone. Because they are scared of some attacks. And probably they have someone to watch for us also, to make sure that nobody attack us and nobody create problem for us. The guy was very nice, allowed me, because I told him that I live overseas and this is, one time life opportunity, I'm here. So he opened the door for me, and I could see an amazing things and that history. And I asked him specifically if people create problem for you and your other, family members or friends who are Jews. And he specifically mentioned no. And people actually, maybe some people go to him and his family and they ask if they need any help, if they have been under attack or anything. And he was appreciated, he told us that he appreciated this help, and he always felt the part of the community and everything. And it was interesting. I would like to report this as well, that it was a gathering of Jewish Iranian Jews, like a demonstration by them, a rally, and that they also supported Gaza, and they also like many other Jews around the world, that they don't want to see another Holocaust in response to an older Holocaust. So killing of anyone not under name of a Jews. So I think it was a wonderful, condition to see, and both supporting of the Iranian community, other non-Jews, to these people, and also how these people were appreciated, how basically the city was helping them and asked them not to open the door. Maybe some, people will, bother them. So it was really nice and to see these as well. And I want to go back to sanctions, because even the Jewish community, who are the, among the poor, mostly, I would say, at least the area that I visited. I've never studied any numbers. I've never did any research, but based on a personal observation, I would say they suffer most of all: women, children, poor communities, and let me say here, refugees. Iran is hosting something between 8 to 10 million refugees from Afghanistan, majority of them from Afghanistan. And when United States, after 20 years of nation building, decided to leave Afghanistan on that situation, and Taliban went back, so many of these people left their homelands and came to Iran. And while Iran is suffering because of sanctions itself, it doesn't have enough, jobs or enough even food sometimes, or a good condition in the country financially, is hosting this large number of refugees as well. And they are suffering really, really highly. And it's unfortunate to see that.
Could you talk about your personal connection with that? Because you've also been to Afghanistan, and why you traveled back to Iran this fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to share with you. I believe it was in 2010 or 11, I traveled to Kabul. I traveled to Afghanistan with Voices for Creative Nonviolence. Kathy Cayley, who has done a lot of work, tremendous work on Afghanistan for years. And I visited there, and with a group of young students, or majority of them were students, but young Afghan peace activists who were also active in nonviolent communications, nonviolent educations. The youngest of all, then, when I met them, was a sweet boy. His name was Gholami, and him and I, from the first moment, we got really connected. And from that moment on, he was the same age as my twin daughters. So from that moment on, I became his mother and he became my son. So we always been in touch. And of course, FOR, then I was working with FOR, and FOR had a program. Basically, it was part of my my program, Afghanistan, as well, which it's not part of the Middle East, but it was working on citizen diplomacy because it didn't have a good relationship with the United States, of course. But then we had a monthly gathering. Its name was, I believe, Global Days of Listening to Afghanistan. And FOR was leading that, and it was amazing. And I was in contact with my son Gholami for a long time, and through those programs, he went through a lot. He was in a school when the bomb was dropped, or it was basically the suicide bombing happened. He hurt his hand. Then he was there when another school was bombed, and he lost some of his friends. This young boy really went through a lot. And then finally, he went to Mazar Sharif and Bamiyan and started to teach the same things that he learned. on nonviolence, on compassion, on peace and justice. And specifically, he worked a lot with the young girls, with the school, with the teaching them how to read and write. He started a library over there. He was very active. In 2018, when I traveled to Iran, he came to Iran also. And after years, we saw each other. It was an amazing moment. He worked in an Iran Peace Museum for a while, and he was very active, but he had to go back to Afghanistan again. At the time when Taliban left, we didn't know what to do. He was not safe in Kabul, and we had to help him to leave Kabul. He came to the border of Iran and Afghanistan. For those who don't remember, Afghanistan has a long border with Iran on the east side. So he came to the border, and unfortunately, he was shot. His leg was shot over there. And at 3 a.m, I got a call that, Mom, I got shot. And so here I was in the States, and I was really devastated, didn't know what to do. So anyway, he came to that border with his then, I believe, 12 or 13-year-old sister, and they both wanted to come to Iran. It was unsuccessful. And when U.S. left, he was one of those people who also left for Germany. And he's in Germany now. He studies German language and everything. So when I was here 6 months ago, I got a call from him that his sister now is 16 years old, and he hasn't been able to go to school in the past 2-3 years that Taliban has been in the office, and they don't allow the girls to go to school. And what can we do? So if he was my son, that means his sister is my daughter automatically. And I felt so responsible that what can we do? I thought about myself and my daughters, and I thought, I will die if someone, stop me from going outside, working, learning, going to school, or anything that it's normal for us, is usual for us. So with the help of another, a wonderful person, a peace activist from Britain, she was able, my daughter, Shireen, was able to leave Afghanistan and come to Iran. And when she arrived safe and sound to my mother's house, my parents' house, then I got a ticket, and a week later, and I went over there, and we met for the first time, which was amazing. Shireen, the name Shireen, her real name is not Shireen, but I call her Shireen most often. Shireen in Farsi means sweet, and she is the sweetest ever. You saw the photo of me and her in a street in Tehran. So she came over there, and I was very busy for a couple of months in order to find a way to register her, because, as I said, 8 to 10 million Afghan refugees are in Iran, and every day they are coming inside the country, and the government has to provide a lot of legals and also many different things for them, as you know, like social security numbers and student numbers, many different things. So I went from south to north of Tehran with her, east to west, to find the different offices. And Iranians are not the best in order to, just tell you where to go, what to do. So I had to, both of us had to go from office to office to find a specific place and to find a good way for her to register her. We were very lucky. And so we got the social security number for her. We got this school number for her, specific student number for her. Now she is legally registered in Iran, in Tehran, to go to school, and she does that. So, of course, there is very difficult. I think about myself, and I said, when I was 16, I was not able to go to another country, live with another person whom I just know her name is Mom, and I don't know much about her. And this person, I don't know who she is. I left my mother, my siblings in Afghanistan. It's very tough, but she's very strong, like many other Afghan women. She's very strong, and she is doing her best. She's studying over there. She is going to school. She learns a lot and very fast. And I hope in a very short period, she can get her high school diploma. And I tried to take her with me over here, but the legality and the process, the legal process for that is very long. And meanwhile, I was thinking, she should go to school while we work on the legal issues. But as I see, that there are families, Afghan families in Iran, and when people are angry, they don't find food or anything. They are angry at them as well. They said, "Oh, we don't have enough food ourselves, and now 10 million of you guys are here." So they are suffering really, and I think one of the things, at least we as activists or group of activists, we can do while we are working on Gaza issue and many other issues, I think we definitely need to work harder on sanctions. Sanctions basically are a weapon that these big countries, big powers are using against their enemies to keep them hungry and to keep them, unsafe, basically, in order to make them whatever they want them to do for them. And that is sad.
And I don't think sanctions have ever, I try to think back in the history of US sanctions, have ever achieved their stated goal, which, the intent is to make the population sanctioned so miserable and desperate that they will overthrow their own government. And just that mechanism, that idea is inherently horrifically cruel. And I wonder if you could talk about what we often see as the backlash, though, of sanctions, which is that they often inspire a more hard line of government, more conservatism, and even nationalism as well. Because where do people direct their hatred from that, and where do they feel their loyalties?
Yes, exactly. As I, earlier also I mentioned that there is a huge gap because of sanctions, economic gap, financial gap between the poor and rich, first of all. There is a small group of people who are going around in order to bring illegal things into the country, illegal mainly by sanctions, by sanction rules into the country, and they make a lot of money, and that makes them really powerful. And these people never want to get rid of sanctions. And because of money they made, they made a lot of power for themselves as well. So they are powerful, and they don't let basically anything change. Also, from the democratic perspective that you mentioned, that is very important, because when it is a sanction, and that means the country has a very difficult time. The country is at war, basically, with their enemy. And when democratic communities, democratic movements, when they want to do anything, so the government immediately can label them that you are working hand in hand with the enemy. So basically, majority of groups that I know, for instance, Mothers for Peace or Iranians for Peace, Iran for Peace, these are the groups that were young and they started to work with the democratic ideas and to work with creating a better relationship for Iran with other nations. But because of these labels, because of this fear that they get labels, they all get quiet. They don't go around, for any kind of things that they would ask before this, they would ask their governments. Now they are not doing it because they are fearful of these labels. While they are suffering because of the bad economy, because of the financial collapse, basically, of many different companies. Sanctions never worked on these areas. And also, think about it. Each one of us have our own personality. Iranians, and each nation also has their own personalities. Iranians, because of they never come to say I'm poor. They never come to say I'm hungry. Especially if the person who they are in relationship with it's not a friend, quote unquote. So basically they keep it to themselves, they keep quiet, and they are hungry. They keep quiet and they are not asking for any money, any donation. And they are suffering day and night by seeing their children, their elders are suffering as well. So, and they are not coming to I believe, they are not coming to the United States to say, okay, we are hungry and we are going to demolish this government and we are going to have a revolution to make the path easy for you to come and help us. They are not going to do that. And meanwhile, the government also is really ready for any kind of movement from the within, because they know part of this horrible sanctions and part of these pressures, the maximum pressures, have been basically for the people to come out and to go for a regime change. So the government doesn't allow this to happen. The people don't want this to happen. So the only result is suffering of the people. A majority of them are weak, are already weak in the society. I interviewed a couple of women from the Iran-Iraq border. Those women were the ones who had experience of a war, Iran-Iraq war as well, because their city was invaded by Saddam Hussein's army in 80s. And I asked them, which one is more difficult, war or sanctions? And almost all of them said sanctions, because in sanctions you die day by day, but in a war it happens suddenly.
I know that I hear from people in Gaza that their biggest fear is to be buried under the rubble and die slowly. People, hope to be hit directly with a rocket, and so there's that similarity. I wanted to ask you to tell our audience just a bit for anyone that doesn't follow Iran so closely. So the aim of these sanctions is to prevent Iran from enriching enough uranium to have a nuclear weapon. So if you could briefly tell us, and then I have a second part to this, how that has resulted, whether that has worked in that aspect or not. Has it brought Iran closer or further from nuclear weapons? And then I was very aware as the Gaza war broke out, was the first time that in many decades that Iran has visited Saudi Arabia, and that actually has started, a few years before with the softening of relations. And I would love to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, now it's interesting. All of these questions are very serious and very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, so the main thing, actually, Iran started its nuclear program during the Shah United States suggested to the Shah of Iran that you need to have a nuclear facilities, nuclear energy, mainly because the oil is going down, is going to finish, and you need that. So Iran started it in 60s. Then its nuclear power and working on that. But by the revolution of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini ordered all of them to stop. But later, 10 years after he died, after the revolution, he died. Again, the new government started to work on that, mainly with the help of Russians. But Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei always said, we are not going to make a nuclear bomb. And he actually issued a fatwa that it's very important for Shias to follow that fatwa, and that we are not going to have a nuclear bomb. But United States mainly, with the leadership of Israel and many other, Western countries, they always have been suspicious to Iran that Iran is going to work on a nuclear bomb. And I should say in a parentheses that non-proliferation, nuclear non-proliferation, basically has a treaty that everyone should sign it. Israel is the only country with the nuclear bombs and nuclear warheads. Some people said more than 400 nuclear warheads that has not signed NPT. And Iran has signed during the Shah, actually, before the revolution, has signed NPT and has been under watch of the nuclear watch of the United Nations. Sometimes, actually, as I mentioned, the Western countries never trusted that Iran is going to have only nuclear facilities and nuclear energy, but rather is going to make a nuclear bomb. Interestingly, in the parentheses, I should also add, I visited a museum in Tehran, a museum of defense, I believe they call it, that they said, they mentioned that with enriched uranium, they have been able to make a lot of medicines and also some material, I believe medicines or radiations for cancer patients. So has been helping them. I know that all of us are against nuclear energy, nuclear bomb, all of that. But also, I believe that is a kind of law that should be for everyone, specifically for the countries that ever has used nuclear bomb before. That is the only, United States is the first one. It should get rid of its nuclear energy or nuclear bomb and all of that. But Iran, since 2003, Iran has been under severe watch for its nuclear activities. Israel, with the help of Mujahideen Khalq, an Iranian terrorist organization, found out that Iran is enriching uranium to the point that they can make a bomb. It was in 2003, and but by then it has had Iran with the West and with the United Nations, with all of these groups, and IAEA specifically has had a lots of ups and downs related to its nuclear issues. From 2008, it has been some back channels between Iran and the United States for having to solve this issue, the nuclear issue. But from 2013 to 2015, it was an open channel. It was majority of the meetings, the people, the public have been aware of that, of those communications and negotiations between the two countries, between Iran and 5 other countries. 5 members of security councils and 5 permanent members, plus Germany. The meetings have been famous to 5+1 with Iran, and has had many years of negotiations. And finally, in 2015, because of many reasons, I can mention them briefly. the nuclear deal was signed, it's famous to JCPOA, and that is what is that for? JCPOA?
Diplomacy. Oh goodness, I'm
Yeah,
going to think on it.
I totally forgot.
But otherwise known as a great win for diplomacy,
Yes.
and you might say Obama's greatest achievement.
Exactly. It was Obama's greatest achievement, because before Obama comes to office, he made his goal that he's going to make the point of U.S. foreign policy and expenses of U.S. foreign policy, instead of Middle East, into the Far East, to China. He wanted to leave the Middle East, and wanted to leave the Middle East for three main powers within the region: Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, to deal with one another, and wanted to leave the region then. But unfortunately, the war hogs in the Senate, in the Parliament of the United States, made it very difficult for him. If you remember, I believe it was 2016 or 15, that Netanyahu came and didn't visit Obama, but went to the Congress and started to talk like a leader of the Congress, or like a leader of this country, to talk against the JCPOA. And Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Oh my God. Yeah. And then so it had been a lot of ups and downs for us from outside watching them, for Iranians inside the country waiting for the good relationship with the West, waiting for these sanctions to be lifted. So it has been very difficult years to watch all of those. But unfortunately, so Obama was really achieved this great diplomacy and great work. But unfortunately, Trump came to office. Yeah.
And we should say that Iran was in full compliance by all measures with the JCPOA at all times and through UN.
Exactly. When JCPOA was signed, my mother asked me, is it possible that someone comes and say, I don't want it, and break it and then rip it apart? And I said, no, it's impossible, because, United States has signed it, the president of the US and all these other involved, the Western countries and Iran have been involved. It's not like children are playing a game. But unfortunately, Donald Trump came, and later we learned that it was under severe influence of Bibi Netanyahu, who had a very close relationship with Donald Trump's son-in-law and Jared Kushner. And they wanted to erase Iran from being a power within the region. And let me tell you, this is impossible. The only, the country, the huge country basically is as size as Texas compared to, other small countries around it. The country with almost 5,000 years of history, the country as Robin says, a country with the cuisine. So the country who has a background and very powerful 80 million of population. And with that specific geopolitics of, having the Persian Gulf, having the Caspian Sea, being in the middle of the world for centuries, have been the center of the world, basically. We always believe, Iranians always say, like Americans, we are the center of the world. But no, I don't say that, but it is, everyone said, basically that geography, that real estate, it is very powerful by itself. You cannot ignore it. You cannot ignore it. And then, but Netanyahu always tried to do that. They wanted to erase Iran being the point in the political game in the region. And of course, Saudi Arabia always had a fear from Iran, and Saudi Arabia and Netanyahu were together, and they pushed in the US government. And finally, it was, I believe, in May of 2018 that Donald Trump came in our TV. We saw him, that he came and said he doesn't recognize that. That was illegal, basically. And it was later I learned United States has left a lot of other treaties, and that was not the first time. But but as you mentioned, go ahead.
We should think about what that tells the world as well in terms of the U.S. being trustworthy when we make agreements and treaties. And I was wondering if you could say, because I don't know the number currently, but what enrichment was at during the JCPOA and what uranium enrichment is at now.
Yeah, it was, I believe it, Iran actually sent out some of its enriched uranium based on the deal, but it's high enough right now. Iran, officials, professionals on the nuclear issue, they all say if Iran wants to make a bomb, it needs only 1 month. So Iran has the ability. You cannot take the ability, out. And you can take the nuclear facilities out. You can bomb them. But if the people have knowledge, they cannot take them out. They have that knowledge. They know how to do that by themselves. And they have increased the number of enriched uranium. I don't remember exactly the number now, but they have done it and they can do it. So the only way to make Iran or any other nation and any other nation states and country and to do whatever you want, only by diplomacy and respect. You cannot threat them. You cannot make them hungry. You cannot bomb them to change their mind. This is exactly what Israelis are doing these days to Gazan people. They cannot eliminate the ideology. They cannot eliminate the idea of being free and loving the freedom that they want. So I would say, yes, they have increased the enriched uranium, the number of enriched uranium. I believe now they have 3 kilo or something to that. But anyway, the main thing, United States wanted to make Iran weak and wanted to make Iran not to being within the region, not to act against the U.S. interests or Israel and Saudi's interests within the region. But just turn on the TV these days. We don't know who is doing what, basically. Everything is behind the scenes for majority of us, but we hear that all the news is talking about Iran has done this, Iran is supporting that group, Iran is so you have, keep Iran out of the way. You have tried to do that in the past couple of years. So that means maximum pressure never was successful. Iran is doing whatever is good for Iran. As I mentioned, is based on the realist ideas. Iran has to do whatever makes the country safe and keep the power over there. And we cannot really criticize any country who want to keep themselves in power. And we can criticize them, of course, but we cannot really say some of the countries don't make themselves powerful, and it's better if they, let us go in and do whatever for them, and others do the way that they are doing it, like Israel and the United States. What you mentioned, Ariel, about the no one in the world can trust the United States, I am really worried for the future of this country. As an American, at my American part, I am really worried that, right now, if I am worried as an Iranian part as well, if the government of Iran is not following democracy rules, let's put it this way: if the government of any country want to kill all their people, can the United States word mean anything? Can USA stop being, fascist like this, or follow the democratic rules or whatever? And is anyone in this world who can listen to the US if we are doing this to Gaza? If the US boycotts any UN, rules and any real UN agendas, that is really disgusting to look at that.
Absolutely.
I am really worried for my country, for this country, to see with both Joe Biden, Democratic, Congress, or whatever they are doing over there. It's sad.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
As we wind up, I want to thank you for joining us. And I wanted to ask if we've been talking about sanctions, and if we could ask folks here on this call, and maybe they could do it now, or write it as a note to do tomorrow. If folks could email or call your representatives in Congress and tell them, and if you would, Leila, just give us a few words of a message of what to tell your senators and representative about sanctions on Iran and what they should do. What you're asking them as their constituent to do.
That was your question to me?
Yes.
I believe we can, even at FOR, I can help, and we can create a kind of talking points if people are interested, that I believe, we need to focus on lifting of the sanctions. If we are worried about other people, those who live in the other side of the world and have dreams, and like us, they think about the future of their children as we think about the future of our children. Especially now, it's the holiday season. Maybe that is a wonderful time to reach out to our members of the Congress and ask for a lifting of the sanctions for Iranian women and children and elderlies, for Iranian patients of different, illnesses who don't have a medicine, for Afghan refugees inside the country, for Afghan women who left their country, like my daughter Shireen, who left everything behind to come here and to come to Iran and start, a life that she deserves. She deserves more than that. All of us deserve more than what our government are giving us. But they need our voice. They need our support. We need to stand in front of people like Tom Cotton and those groups and ask for lifting the sanctions on Iranian people. They don't have power. The government has the power, not them.
And pursuing diplomacy instead.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, and I'll just briefly ask as well, what is the feeling in Iran about the warming of relations with Saudi Arabia, a long time enemy?
Yeah, Iran and Saudi Arabia also had a lot of ups and downs. Some people would like to focus on Shia-Sunni issues. Me personally, not. I don't think is anything ideological, because I don't think Iranian government is ideological. They are very realistic. They are looking at everything basically to keep themselves in power. And Iran and Saudi broke their relationship, I believe it was 7-8 years ago. Maybe it was 2016, 17, or maybe before that, Saudis actually executed a Shia clergy, a Saudi Shia clergy in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, and Iranian hardliners, some of their supporters. They attacked the Saudi embassy. and it was kind of illegal. Iranian government, apologized, but Saudi immediately closed down its embassy. Some people say maybe they were hired by Saudi government because Saudi didn't want to have the relationship with Iran. So anyway, the relationship broke out between the two countries, and they became number one enemies within the region, to the point that Saudis and Israelis became really close against Iran. But later, actually, something suddenly one day out of nowhere, for majority of us who didn't follow, it happened that the Saudis and Iranians representatives met in China, and that was kind of a slap on U.S. face as well, because China had that diplomatic role and became the diplomatic power within the region. And of course, China wants to make its own money, and having a good relationship between Saudi and Iran that doesn't hurt any, financial investment within the region, it would help China. And China wanted to have this relationship between the two groups become warm. And it did. A couple of months later, Saudi sent a delegation to Iran, and they officially started opened their embassies, and they started the relationship. Now, the latest was in last OPEC meeting, I believe it was, that another meeting. I'm sorry for my bad memory.
I think it was the OPEC, but in Saudi Arabia in response to the Gaza war, I believe.
Yes, and then Iran and Saudi Arabia, along with other Muslim countries, they started to talk about, supporting Gaza, and they signed an agreement that they all stand together. And that was when the United States was talking and working on making a good relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That is still, of course, on the table, and nobody basically talks about it, but nobody talks about the continuation of that either. Neither is broken and nor is working on that. They are working on that, but I don't think Arab street, people in Arab countries, average people, would like to see, at least till 5 years from now, I believe, any relationship with any Arab government with Israel. But this maybe, I believe, I think this relationship or lack of with Israel and kind of gap between Saudi and Israel, and it might be open doors between a better and warmer relationship of Saudi and Iran, because I believe these three countries or these three nations are they have, each one of them have enough power within the region. And the best thing that could happen for the region is kind of, I won't say close relationship and being a best friend with one another, but at least, at least they shouldn't, be the number one enemies, because that would be great for the people within the region. Right now, for instance, just imagine for a second, if Saudi and Iran had a good relationship with Israel, they could really force Israel to stop that against Gaza. But right now, these two other powers, they don't have any kind of way to negotiate with Israelis, at least on the surface. And we're suffering, all the people within the region, and all of us who have friends and family members in that area. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. And I was curious if you felt the same way as me, that it's a positive development, as diplomacy is always better than animosity. So I want to thank you so much, Leila, for being with us. today, and I put in the chat, folks. You can email info@forusa.org, and we can put you in touch with Leila to have a script to speak to your members of Congress about lifting sanctions on Iran and the U.S. getting back into the JCPOA. It's never too late. And we could also end up getting that information up on our website. So please be in touch. And as we close out, we're going to close with an end of year message, as well as a brief tribute to Palestinian poet and scholar who is among those killed recently in Gaza.
May the blessed memory of Palestinian poet and scholar Rafat al-Arir, killed this month in Gaza, be such that orphaned children in Gaza, when they see a white kite with a long tail, while looking heaven in the eye, think for a moment that an angel, their dad, is there.
If I must die, you must live. To tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself. Seize the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
In the name of Adonai, may the angel Michael be at your right,
and the angel Gabriel be at your left.
And in front of you, the angel Uriel.
And behind you, the angel Raphael.
And above your head, the Shekinah,
the divine presence.
There is no God but Allah,
the King, the Holy, the All-Peaceful.
the All-Peaceful,
the All-Peaceful,
the giver of security,
the overseer,
the most mighty, the great,
the great.
The great.
Exalted is Allah from anything associated with the Lord,
the merciful and all-compassionate, and disposer of all affairs.
And the angel said unto them, Fear not.
Fear not.
Fear not, for behold,
I bring you good tidings.
I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people.
For unto you is born this day a Savior.
And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe
wrapped in swaddling clothes,
lying in a manger.
And suddenly there was with the angel
a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying,
Glory to God in the highest.
Glory to God in the highest.
Glory to God.
Glory to God in the highest.
And on earth peace.
And on earth peace. On earth peace.
And on earth peace.
Peace.
Peace. Peace.
Peace.
Salam,
Peace.
Soul.
Peace.
Shalom.
peace.
Peace.
Goodwill toward all.